Good evening. Just going to wait a few minutes to see who joins us. Just going to wait a few minutes to see who joins us. So if you've joined us in the live chat, if you could give us a hello, then that would give me an indication that we're up and running. Hello, Hannah. So we are functioning, which is great. So we were looking at the vote last couple of days, and although we talked about anxiety for the first week, that's on the new poll, that still comes quite high on something to talk about. So if people could fire in their questions, then I'd be happy to answer any that we may have. In the meantime, I'll just check if there's any issues on Facebook. Okay, so I think we're up and running. So we'll give folk another few minutes to join us if they're going to be, and then we can kind of get started. Hello, Kim. Welcome along. I'm not sure if you're in the States or in the UK, where we are in Scotland, but nice to have you with us. Now, Kim, I'd noticed that you left a couple of comments in the group, so if there was anything that you wanted to ask specifically, you're in the States, cool. If there's anything that you wanted to ask specifically about your personal circumstances, bearing in mind that it's a public forum, then you're more than welcome to ask any questions that you may have. While we're waiting, it might be a bit of self-promotion, but I am starting at the beginning of March to offer meditation classes once a week that will be on Facebook Live, and also they'll be available to tune in whenever it suits you, but also I'm going to be running a sleep clinic. So for those who can't sleep very well or struggle to stay asleep, the hope would be that you can tune in each week, or probably if you're in the States like Kim, tune in when it's bedtime where you are, and hopefully it will be a nice little session just to help you relax and prepare your mind and body for sleep. So I'm hoping that we can kind of get that up and running first week of March. So I'm kind of gathering sort of feedback about that at the moment, doing a bit of research, and so I'm hoping to get that on the go, and so you'll see that advertised. So feel free to get in touch, ask any questions, and if you'd like some more information or to sign up, then we can arrange that. That's a good question. I'm sure we've kind of discussed that briefly in the group, Kim. But I think from what you've said is that you have been in a very difficult relationship, and that now that things are kind of at an end and you've realised how controlling the relationship was, that the other party, shall we say, is now playing the victim and saying that they are unwell, or they were not as bad as it was actually the case, and so you feel that your friends are siding with them and that you're not being believed. I think that there's a world created around an abusive relationship where what goes on in the home and what goes on outside the home, and the peer group and the sphere that you move in have a very different perception of what your relationship was like, And I think that you have to be willing to let people go. If you have decided that the world that was created for you and around you by your controller and the people and sphere of people that moved in that world, you are shaking up things by saying that enough is enough, to recognizing that control was a large part of the relationship. And if people are comfortable with the worldview that they had and they're not willing to hear what you have to say and believe you, then they will not be moving into the new paradigm that you are going to create for your life. That they're going to choose to believe the other party, and they are going to choose to have the comfortable version of reality, which is that they know how the relationship was and they know how the dynamics were, and so they can just get confirmation bias from your ex-partner, and so they can keep their nice tidy worldview as it is, and rather than them having to shake up their world like you are having to yours. But really, ultimately, it doesn't matter if these people were real friends. If these people valued you, then they would listen to what you have to say. And even if it meant that they have to reevaluate how they assess people and how they can be taken in themselves. I always say, forgive the ignorance of others, because you're not responsible for them. And it sounds like you're actually making steps to make your life and future better. And unfortunately, that, just like it does require facing your ex-partner and facing up to what the reality was of the relationship, I think also that what comes with that is every social dynamic and every situation that was built up on that foundation. And so the price that you may have to pay for sovereignty and for an opportunity to be who you need to be happy, the cost is sometimes the old world has to leave for the new world to be born. And that can be difficult, and it can be lonely, and it can be stressful, and there's a lot of hurt feelings that come with that. That you have to accept that people that you thought that you could rely on, perhaps you can't. And yeah, I think that a new paradigm comes with new friends and new social dynamics where it's quite hard to escape. You may be the new person that you want to be or working towards that, but that's not the person that the people have got used to knowing. And so you are no longer in that neat box that they have created for you, maybe over 20 years, maybe over a long time. And so especially in the context of a relationship that, like I say, that they had an understanding of the relationship and how it worked and who you were and who he was and who you together were. And just like it gets completely shaken up for you, it also gets shaken up for your friends. And so the nice and easy path for them is just to maintain the status quo and stay with the relationship with him that hasn't changed. It's you that's changed. And they'll probably say that she's changed. Well, yeah, you have changed. And that's no bad thing, but it is going to be different. And so they have a choice to make whether they are going to be with you or not. And as sad and as difficult as that may be, that is something that might have to happen for you to move forward and be all that you can be. As I've said to you, Kim, I think in the comments on one of the posts, if you want to explore that further, then get in touch and we can unpick things in a bit more detail than maybe is appropriate on a public forum, like a public Facebook group. But I mean, I think relationships are very difficult. I think that most people have issues of some kind or other. And I think that, so if you bring two people together, and one has their issues and one has their issues, then it's almost inevitable that there will be issues that may arise in trying to navigate a relationship. And it could be that people are too needy or too independent, or, there's a million and one factors that have to be considered when entering into a relationship and committing to a long-term relationship. And there can be all sorts of factors. And often what you find is that one party tends to be more dominant, and that could be for a whole host of different reasons. That their need for control comes from things that they struggle with, and that they find controlling their environment is a lot easier. And often you find that some people prefer to acquiesce their power. And so, unfortunately, in abusive relationships, that's a perfect match of the worst kind, that someone who likes to control and someone who maybe is a people pleaser or wants to give up their control and let someone else take charge. And neither party need to be aware that that is what's happening, or they might be. But the dynamics of a relationship, especially in controlling relationships, as that someone is a natural controller and someone's a natural pleaser and chooses a role of subservient, and they will be like that at work, and they may be like that in their peer groups. And so in a personal relationship, in a way, most times someone tends to take the lead, or almost someone has to take the lead, because when decisions are made, generally when agreement is met, it can often be that someone is, just like with all things in a relationship, you have to give up some things for the good of the relationship, and some things you'll take the lead on or stand for. But unfortunately, in the controlling relationships and dynamics, it's one person that makes the decisions, and there's one person that follows. And so even if you don't know it, it can be a very toxic relationship, and people have issues, but they're not attributing the difficulties that they're having with the relationship. They think it's about them, that they're doing something wrong, and it can be happening all around you and not even know it. I mean, there's a million and one complications of having a relationship with someone, because we're all individuals. And so whatever situation that you go into in life, you bring you and your hang-ups and your difficulties and your strengths and your hopes and your dreams for the future and all sorts of things. And so an individual is complicated enough. So if you take two people and put them together in a enclosed environment and spend a lot of time together, then sometimes those dynamics complement each other, that someone tends to not look after themselves enough and the other person's a carer, or there's a million different variations and variables on ways in which one party in a relationship and the other can either complement or clash, essentially. And it's very hard to find someone who is at a place in their life where they are willing to give of themselves enough, and the other party is doing the same, and that there is a resonance in the relationship between those two individuals that works. And I think, especially in kind of modern times when people are having a lot of difficulties these days, and also I think that people feel that they have more say. I think that certainly in my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation, that once you're with someone, generally speaking, it didn't matter if you were unhappy, and it didn't matter if love wasn't there. I think social convention dictated that you stayed where you were because that's just what you did. And I think that the social pressure and the family pressure that comes with going against that tradition was too much for people to bear. And I think maybe as a culture we've went too much the other way, that people feel that they can just sort of flip from thing to thing, and there's a kind of hedonistic pleasure-seeking element of culture these days, that people think that the next thrill, the next bit of excitement is easier and better than working on a relationship or helping someone with, if someone is not giving you what you need in a relationship, then maybe rather than helping them to find themselves or heal to improve the relationship, people are much quicker to leave. And so I think that that's partially responsible for, among many other reasons, the sort of breakdown is, you know, the marriage and or divorce rates are very, very high. And I think if you speak to a lot of young people these days, that they are loath to enter into long-term committed relationships, or there's the idea of marriage has lost its appeal. I think that there's been a cynicism that has developed about kind of institutions like marriage, and maybe in some ways that's a good thing. Maybe in some ways that's progress. But I think that what people gain from positive and healthy relationships has lost its import. And I think that people who are not ready for relationships dash into them, and people that are looking for happiness and think that selfish hedonism and being free to do what you like is the path to happiness, I think that they are probably mistaken. I think that companionship and having your own institution of a home or of a life, that is something to work for, it's something to defend, it's something to raise your own standards to, is a moral standard that if you can find that relationship, and many people can't, if you can find that relationship, then that can be a wonderful thing. I think that culturally we're lost. I mean, the West as a culture, I think that we're quite lost. I think it's interesting because psychologically, people who are not in a great place or they don't have fulfillment, some people argue that that's, you know, Nietzsche said God is dead, and I think that without something greater than yourself, without something bigger to work for, people tend to reach for immediate sensory gratification or comfort, and that's where you get things like comfort eating, and you get kind of thrill seeking, whether it's promiscuity or whether it's, you know, technology is a big one, that if you can, the excitement of a new thing and a new, you know, treat, then that has become where people look for happiness. And there are a million criticisms that can be put towards the olden days and the misogyny and the poor living conditions and a million and one things that were wrong with society in the olden days. But I think that we're not replacing it with something better in many circumstances. And I don't think people are happier as a result of this so-called freedom that we all have to wander aimlessly, seeking the next bit of gratification. And so I think for me, the importance of doing work on yourself and the importance of recognizing what you need to work on to be the best person that you can be sets you up for the ideal circumstances for meeting someone on a level playing field, to have a healthy, mutually respectful relationship, to be all you can be for your children or in your work, that finding purpose, something to work for, a standard to live to, and it doesn't have to be God, but finding something worthwhile enough to sacrifice the immediate gratification of the sensory world and aim for something higher, and know that you could be better, and not thinking that you're everything just because you live in 2022, but in actual fact that there is work to be done. There's always work to be done. And that is not something to beat yourself with, but it's something that you can always aim for better. And you can always, there's more work to be done, and there's more work to be done. And whether or not you can ever get there is maybe up for debate. But I think that happiness and fulfillment in life comes from work, or at least, from work, from aiming in the right direction, and knowing that you're doing your bit, you're doing your best, or you're doing your bit, and that every time you learn something, and that's something else that you know, and being able to reevaluate and being able to reflect and say, well, I got that wrong, but I'll apply my energy there. That will help. And so I think that life is very simple and very complicated at the same time. I think that I believe that you take responsibility for your choices and your actions. I think that can be difficult. I think that's really important. I think that to have something to live for and to work for and to put in front of your own needs is to a cause, or could be family, or I think making yourself strong enough to be of service to others. I think that you can't be proper service to others until you have strengthened enough to stand on your own 2 feet. And from there, you can then reach out to your neighbours and those around you that need you. And ultimately, broader than that, and culturally, you can make changes. But I think that people in this day and age are really quick to try and address the world's issues when they haven't done their own work anywhere close to their own work yet. And I think that if you can't stand on your own 2 feet, and you can't even face the things that are missing in your life or in your own self that you need to work on, then you're not well armed to take on the challenges that the world faces on a kind of geopolitical stage. So I would recommend to everybody that they work out what they're doing wrong and what keeps repeating in life that they are clearly missing a lesson, because life tends to give you the same lessons until you learn. And if you can find out the things that you're doing wrong, then that's a step towards working out what you should be doing right, or what you could be doing better. And if you need help with that, get in touch, because I'm happy to help you with that. And when it's time to get the work done, and if you don't know what it is that you have to do, that's the first small step to make life better, then get in touch and I will help you to find it out. And I don't have all the answers, and I certainly don't know everything, but I can help you with the process of learning more about yourself. And so please, if that is something that you need help with, then ask. And if you want to put comments in the group, or you want to join in with the things there, but these are sort of little bits to try and maybe help you think, or get you thinking or reflecting. But ultimately, at some point, when there's work to be done, there's work to be done. And that doesn't come in a nifty question on a Facebook group. And it doesn't have to be terrible, it doesn't have to be scary, but it has to be honest and it has to be reflective. And inner work is called work for a reason. It requires work. So I hope that if you're out there and you're watching this and you feel that there could be value in recognizing it's time to do something different, better, that you will let me know or come to the group. And if you know someone else that's struggling or could benefit from exploring how to make their own life better, then invite them to the group or give them my details and ask them to get in touch. And I'm happy to help them, but they have to be ready and want to make changes, because that's what I do. It's not just filling air, it's improving life. So until next week, or maybe even week after, take care, and I shall speak to you all soon.